Golf is a very different sport. It is played by men and women who police themselves over a vast coverage area in small groups of 2 to 4 competitors. Fans are to remain silent until immediately after the action, and you, as a sports writer, will not get to watch everything. This makes it a challenge and a joy to cover. Before you cover your first golf match, remember the basics. Golf is often called a gentleman's game. Not meaning to sound sexist, ladies, it got that moniker before women played. This is because competitors are on their honor much of the time. Officials cannot watch every competitor on every stroke, and there are so many trivial little rules related to where shots may be taken from, drops, penalties, and the like, that competitors are expected to be honest. The intro to this chapter in the Gisandi book gives you a taste. It is also important to remember that in golf, the lowest score wins. This is the focus, but stats like greens hit in regulation, average drive length, driving accuracy can really tell your readers or viewers how effectively a player performed. And remember, qualifying rounds are almost as important as the actual tournament. If a great player fails to qualify, that can carry through as a story throughout the tournament. Similarly, if an amateur makes it onto the Pro Tour and qualifies for the tournament, that is a huge story. Now get ready to cover the event. Do your homework so you know the course. Is it a long course, thus playing to the strengths of a player ranked high in driving distance? Does it have a lot of water or bunkers? Are greens traditionally fast or slow? Also study the players. Has a competitor won many times on this course? Is this course a particular challenge for another? Is a player going for a record? And note their stats. Finding the group with the best story is critical. You may have two players who don't like each other who are paired up, or you may have a group with a couple players chasing history. These don't have to be the best players. Create a note-taking system that works for you. You won't have time to write down in longhand all the details. Again, Gisandi gives you a really nice example. And finally, bring a rule book. Remember what I said about all the detailed rules. Watch the tournament carefully and learn golf etiquette. My dad was a stickler for this when we would play, and he would get very cranky if anyone broke the rules. Remember, you as a sports writer are not to be part of the story. Early in his career, Tiger Woods became famous for his outbursts at fans or media who snapped pictures in the middle of his swing. This is very distracting. You also don't want to get in the way of other golfers, or other fans, so be polite. And don't freak out if you hear a roar from another hole, usually indicating someone has sunk a big putt or made a great approach. You can't be everywhere. Accept it. Early on, as I said, find the group with the most interesting story. But during the final rounds, you do need to follow the leaders. That is going to be your major story 9 out of 10 times. Watch these players and note their body language and reactions. Do they have a sudden spring in their step, indicating they've been playing well and are gaining confidence? Are they taking a long time over shots, perhaps indicating they are struggling? Do they seem tired, which means they may not be able to finish strong and are likely to fade? Finally, remember it is a three-phase sport. Players usually want to drive the ball as long off the tee box as possible. This is very impressive, but it doesn't tell the whole story. The drive should get you closer to the green, but if the player is having a rough time chipping onto the green, long drives matter little. Or if a competitor doesn't drive it far, but is always in the fairway, thus getting a good approach and is nailing putts, that is just as effective. Focus on the total game. Interviews should never take place during competition. You wouldn't walk up to a volleyball setter and ask her how her team was able to attack through the defense so consistently, now would you? Same with golf. Be patient and wait until competitors have finished their round, signed their card, and had a chance to catch their breath. Top players, as in most other sports, will be brought to the media center for interviews after the tournament. Ask them to summarize their round. Ask about their clubs, why they went away from the driver off the tee box in favor of a 3-wood, what club they used for that amazing approach shot on number 9, and for their mindset throughout the tournament, especially on the critical holes when they were either battling back or holding off the competition. Do show some empathy and decorum, recognizing they've been through an exhausting mental and physical challenge. But don't baby them either. True competitors want honesty. Again, Gisandi gives you a couple good examples of ways to and not to phrase questions. Many of your best quotes will come from the golfer's opening statements, so pay attention. And if you try to catch a competitor outside the press area, be respectful but persistent. If they keep walking, offer to walk with them for the interview. If they ask for 10 minutes, give them 10 minutes. but then make sure you go back to them. Finally, ask about the course. Did it play to their strengths? Why were the greens so slow? How did the wind affect them? Asking about the course is also essential in preview stories. Now it is time to write the story. As always, start with the most interesting story. This may not be the winner. It could be about the top player who was going for a record but faded late. Or it might be a player making a comeback. Certainly the winner should be early in the story, but it may not be in the lead. Golf writing is a time when you can really paint word pictures. You need to be detailed in your descriptions. Saying a player sank a long putt is not nearly as informative as saying a player accurately read the late right-to-left break and sink in a 20-foot putt. Also, cite trends. This is going to require that you pay attention to details. Did a golfer miss 3 or 4 fairways in a row, usually indicating he was having to battle through rough, thus making the round much more challenging? Did she card 5 consecutive birdies to climb back into contention? This really tells a lot about how the competitor played. Remember, in college, the focus is generally on the team. Yes, individuals who perform well are important, but teams are competing here, unlike the pros. Unless, of course, the pros are competing in a team competition. Note the AP rules, especially for numbers. And speaking of numbers, somewhere in the story it is important to include the total yardage and par for the course. Total yardage tells the reader or listener if the course is especially long, again playing in favor of the long drivers, while noting par gives your audience an idea of how well competitors shot. If the top 10 competitors shot between 60 and 65 on a par 72 course, the course was probably pretty easy. And as always, avoid cliches. Be creative. Lastly, here are some of the key terms with which you are going to need to be familiar as you cover golf. 2 I want to point out are PGA and PGA Tour. The PGA, or Professional Golfers Association, is a teaching organization. The PGA Tour is an organization comprising professional golfers, and it runs most U.S. men's professional events. Do not confuse the two. The USGA, meanwhile, hosts the U.S. Open, and its rules are used on most golf courses.